Hello, welcome back to Desperate Living, and it's time for another roundup of recently received discs. This time, decidedly mixed bag of stuff in terms of content, not quality, from 88 films. And without further ado, let's get into them. We'll kick off with a couple of movies that I've actually worked on. I'll kind of be upfront about that, lest anyone accuses me of somehow hyping these movies without letting you know that I have some involvement in them. I've done commentaries on these two films. You know, I generally don't do commentaries on films that I don't like. And here's one, Incubus, the 1982 supernatural slasher from John Hoff, starring John Cassavetes. Based on the best-selling novel, which when I was a kid used to see everywhere, by Ray Russell. Now, Incubus is an interesting film because when I first saw this on VHS, back when it first came out on VHS, when it was still a very controversial movie, I have to say that I didn't much care for it. And that was, I think, primarily because the fact that the VHS release, certainly the one that came out in the UK on the VTC label, was pretty bad quality, even by the standards of VHS. You know, it was murky, you couldn't really make out what was going on. It just seemed more grimy than perhaps it needed to be because, yeah, it was just grim and grotty in the wrong way. You know, you just couldn't see. It was like essentially watching a bad bootleg of a film, even though this was something that I just rented from the shop. So for many years, I thought that Incubus was, a substandard movie. Watching it again, and when I was asked if I was interested in doing something on this, I was kind of, okay, maybe let me have a look at the film, see what I think. I was hugely surprised. This Blu-ray edition looks amazing, looks so much better than that tape ever did, and it's actually a really good film. It's got a lot of really interesting stuff. It's definitely, how do we put it? It's problematic, I suppose, in many ways. I mean, the nature of it is a sex-crazed demon who is raping and murdering women, and there's no beating around the bush with that. I mean, while it's not particularly sexually explicit or anything, it certainly doesn't kind of hold back on what is involved in that. Certainly John Cassavetes playing the pathologist who's investigating the case is pretty upfront about just, what the physical effects of being molested by a demon with an outsized member are. I don't think we need to go into it any more detail than that. But beyond that, it's a really interesting film.
When the sun goes down, something stalks the streets of Galen Village.
Joe wants to call the Attorney General, have him send in some help. What do you think I should do?
Take whatever help you can get.
30 years ago in Galen, these same types of murders occurred.
I think my past has something to do with these murders.
No, Tim, listen.
Something silent. Something lethal. Something or someone is killing the people of Galen.
Iron Maiden fans will be amused to see an extended cameo by Bruce Dickinson in his previous incarnation in the band Samson. Some really good performances all round. The demon itself is, I've seen better demons, but it's of its time, shall we say. But on the whole, this is a really impressive film, and yeah, a beautiful new addition. Once again, you might think that I'm overly hyping this, but somebody else I was discussing this with a couple of weeks ago was saying pretty much the same thing, that watching this new edition is a revelation. So let's have a look at the actual disc. As you can see, it's part of the Slasher Classics collection. It's taken me 3 attempts to say that correctly. A bit of a tongue twister. Is it a slasher film? I don't know, but it's not a slasher film, if you know what I mean. But obviously, it's a supernatural movie as much as anything. Here's the cover, which is kind of based on the original artwork. Certainly this is the artwork that I saw this film being promoted in. There's a bit of controversy about the fact that this image actually resembles quite a bit the artwork for Umberto Lenzi's Nightmare City, which actually came out before this. So could be a rare case of a Canadian film copying an Italian movie. Who knows? On the inside cover we have the alternative art, this was what was on the front of the UK VHS, which I'd always assumed at the time was just because it was in that kind of post-video nasties era when everyone was panicking a little bit about having anything too graphic on the cover, but seemingly not. This actually does seem to be, one of the most widely used commercial images. As usual, I'll slip the cover in the other way around so that there's access to both. Inside there's a nice little booklet, and God bless 88 for continuing to do booklets. They're one of the few labels out there doing this. So yeah, there you go. This is really nice. Highly recommended, especially I guess if you've seen the film before and like myself and like other people that I've spoken to thought it was not all that at the time. I think this is well worth another look, and hopefully you'll find it as revelatory as I did.
Somebody in this town died.
It is real. It is alive. It is among us. The Incubus.
So the other film for 88 that I've recently done commentary on is a very different kind of film. It couldn't be much more different. Nicholas Roeg's Castaway with Oliver Reed and Amanda Donohoe. The famous, once again, kind of controversial at the time, based on the levels of nudity and so on and so forth. I mean, you'll note that it's a 15 rated film, so lots of nudity, but not really very much sex. Nudity mostly, has to be said, from Amanda Donohoe. Oliver Reed is slightly naked, but probably not as naked as he was in Women in Love, for instance. And as you see here again, the alternative cover of this, I think that's the original VHS artwork. I could be wrong. It's been a long time since I've seen the original VHS, it has to be said. But I've always admired this movie and was really glad to get a chance to do a commentary on something like this. I don't like to say respectable film because I don't have that attitude towards any of the films that I've worked on. I think they're all great movies in their own way, but obviously this is a different kind of film than, say, Strip Nude for Your Killer or Iguana with a Tongue of Fire.
Gerald Kingsland and Lucy Irvine, total strangers until she answered his ad.
Mr. Kingsland?
And made an extraordinary commitment.
Now make sure that we don't starve, Lucy.
To spend a year together, alone, in an island paradise.
Lucy!
Welcome to Chewing.
I mean, if you haven't seen this, it's based on the true story of a couple who essentially get, by their own choice, cast away on a fairly deserted island for a year, and their complicated relationship, shall we say, that develops over that time. And it's really good. It's essentially a two-hander. There are a few other characters pop up here and there, but I'd say maybe 75% of the film is just these two people, and watching them butt heads. Neither of them are especially likeable people. They've all got their faults, they've all got their problems, but nevertheless, I think they both become sympathetic in their own ways. Great performances. This was Amanda Donohoe's first film, and she's really good in this, and obviously she spends a lot of the film naked, so that's, it's asking a lot of somebody in their first movie, and especially if they're trapped on an island with Oliver Reed, with his reputation. But of course, it goes without saying that Oliver Reed is absolutely fantastic in this. He's brilliant, he's monstrous, he's pathetic, he's he's just great. You know, he really humanises a character who could in many ways be thoroughly unlikable. So also included on the disc there's a set of, I guess, little postcards. They're always nice to have, I suppose. I'm never quite sure what to do with these, other than, as you will see with some of the other reviews I've done, just struggle to get them out of this little thing. But yes, you'll note most of them seem to involve a naked Amanda Donahoe, so never let it be said that 88 don't know their audience. There's also the booklet, which if you've seen the film you'll understand why the cover is the way it is. So yeah, it goes without saying obviously that this is another beautiful looking film, as you would expect from Nicholas Roeg. Maybe it's Roeg's, maybe his last great film. I don't know, that's a bit harsh, but you know, it's definitely, you know, on the one hand a very commercial film, on the other hand it's still got all those Roeg touches that you would expect. Now here's a film that I've been waiting to see for many years. So glad to have this. Pinnochio 964, which is a Japanese film from 1991 and very much a part of that kind of Japanese like cyberpunk, cyber sex genre that emerged around that time. You think of films like, say, Tetsuo and Nekomimi, something like even IKU, if you know those movies. This is very much in that field, kind of arty, fetishy, very kind of the era, cutting edge stuff, and made in a very, you know, stylized and dramatic way. So this one comes with the film on both DVD and Blu-ray, fair enough, and like a lot of the Japanese releases on 88, comes with the little Obi strip, which has all the information on, which of course allows you to have the cover in its purest sense. And on the flip of this is the original Japanese cover, which I've always been one of my kind of favourite bits of movie artwork, so obviously I'm going to flip that around. In here as well there's a booklet with a pretty spectacular cover. I think when 88 started releasing a lot of their Japanese stuff, maybe people thought it was all going to be ultra gore, ultra sexy stuff, so really interesting that they've been picking up on things like this. I mean, we can kind of throw Tokyo Decadence, which they've also released a while ago, in with this whole genre. Tokyo Decadence is a bit of a different kind of film, I suppose, but it feels like it fits. This is one of those movies that never in a month of Sundays did I expect to be seeing released in the UK, so I'm really glad, and it's only a 15 rating too. But don't let that put you off. It's still pretty edgy, weird, arty, oddball stuff. A must-have item. Another must-have item, absolutely a must-have if you're a fan of giallo films. I'm sure lots of you are. And even if you're not, this is probably one of the finest examples of the genre, and so great to see it in this gorgeous edition. Odolado's short Night of the Last Dolls, which, as you can see by the sheer thickness of the box, is quite the package of an early giallo, but one that's kind of blurs genre a little bit. It's definitely got a very arty edge to it. Don't want to tell you too much about it because I think it's kind of the best way to approach this movie is pretty blind, to be honest, but you know, just take my word for it when I say it is one of the finest examples of the genre.
Mira.
I love you. You'd be sad to leave Prague.
Why, yes, I enjoy it.
And of course this edition is on UHD. So it comes on UHD and Blu-ray, so for those of you who are not UHD'd up, don't worry, because you've got the Blu-ray here as well. And again, there's a little stack of, these are like lobby cards. I won't go through the whole kerfuffle of taking these out again. I'll just pull one or two, and there you go. Cover artwork by Graham Humphreys there, and of course the original artwork. What a great piece of art that is. Now you notice no booklet inside this sleeve, which is because of course there's a very chunky book, and this is a book. This is, how many pages do we have here? 75. Yeah, an 80-page book essentially. I mean, you almost wish that somebody would kind of issue these books as kind of standalone things as well when these limited special editions run out. And there's the poster, which is like the double-sided poster. So the Graham Humphreys art on one side and the original movie poster on the other. If you're new to Jello, I think I was saying when I was talking about Argento's Four Flies on Grey Velvet that maybe that's not the film to introduce people to Jello. This, I think, would be a fine introduction to the genre because it's above and beyond, if that makes sense. It's more than the sum of its parts. It's more than just a Jello. It's the kind of thing that would speak to a much wider audience if it had ever had the chance to receive a much wider audience. But of course, this has been one of those films that's for a long time wallowed in relative obscurity. Certainly I didn't see this until the days of tape trading when you could pick up an imported copy, and not a great quality copy obviously, but it, as I recall, it never come out in the UK in the VHS era. Finally, we've got a box set of 3 films, the Erotic Ghost Story trilogy. If you're unfamiliar with the Erotic Ghost Story films, I mean they kind of are what it says on the box really. Appearing during that great era of Hong Kong Category 3 films, the first movie kind of inspired by The Witches of Eastwick, shall we say, but a much better film and obviously a lot sexier. And then Part 2 and Part 3 coming in different years. Not a continuing series in the sense of an ongoing story. So they're all lightweight, softcore, sexy comedies, inspired obviously by the success of films like A Chinese Ghost Story. And these films would actually inspire their own series of copycat imitators, a whole bunch of supernatural erotic movies, including the very similarly titled Chinese Erotic Ghost Story. You could probably quite easily mistake this for one of these films if you didn't know any better, as I probably did when I bought this. This, as you can see, is a VCD, which means that you have to watch the film across 2 discs. This, as you can see, this is splintered away, so you can only imagine what condition the discs are in, but it's still a nice little novelty to have. I do like VCDs in terms of their packaging and their cover. Obviously not the quality which is like sub VHS, but still, fun. But to get back to the originals, each of these comes, as you would expect by now, if you've been paying attention, with different sleeves on the inside. So there's a series package for each one, and then the original artwork. None too subtle. I think the Category 3 symbol on there could barely be any larger. And of course, this film is the movie that helped introduce the world to the phenomenon known as Amy Yip, who was Hong Kong's first proper erotic film star, certainly the first international erotic film star, the one who would have a reputation around the world. I mean, she came along at exactly the right time, obviously, when the whole explosion of interest in Hong Kong cinema was happening, and in the category 3 films which allowed more sex, more violence, more horror to be included. So this is a really nicely put together collection, and yeah, a really nice box to have on the shelf. So that's it, my recent haul of 88 releases. I'm aware that I've been sort of gushing about all of these, but there is a reason why I've got them. I didn't pick them because I didn't want them. Anyway, I'll be back in a few days. I know I said this after the last video and it's been 11 days since, but you know, things happen. But I'll be making an extra effort to be back in 2 or 3 days with a handful more discs. This time a somewhat more random selection in terms of labels, and maybe even moving into some recently picked up records. Who could say? The only way to find out is to stay tuned. So make sure that if you've enjoyed this video to hit the like button, and if you don't want to miss the next one, why not subscribe to Desperate Living? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.